Blood Surge is unbelievably good at farming Infernal Hordes. What you're looking at is a level 7 Infernal Horde that I ended up putting up 700 points on while playing Blood Surge. That is incredible. This build annihilates it, and it does all of that while only playing 2 buttons. This build is incredible. And this build actually becomes so powerful that even though Blood Surge struggles in single target compared to Bone Spirit, I was actually able to boost Tormented bosses playing this build. I was able to kill Uber Lilith. I was able to clear a Pit 120. The weaknesses of this build, while strong, are heavily made up for its incredible strength at farming Infernal Horde. If you don't know, Infernal Horde is by far the most efficient thing to farm in the game. Whether you're looking for pit mats, gold, anything, items, whatever you're looking for, it is going to be an Infernal Horde, and this is the best build to farm Infernal Horde. Even if you're still leveling, this is the best leveling build. If you're in the early end game before you have Uber-Uniques, this build is still the best Infernal Horde build. This build from level 1 all the way to level 100 is just an absolute destroyer, and the final version of the build is just incredible. One of the best things about this build is while you're running around blowing up the entire screen, you're also going to do it being incredibly tanky. Now, the final version of the build is insanely tanky. Fully buffed up, I am sitting at, let me drink my potion here, I am sitting at 81,000 life. And this, like I said, the final in-game version of the build, okay? It's crazy tanky. But even in the earlier game versions, it's very tanky. And there's a lot that you can do to increase your survivability. But god dang, man, once you get that final build online, it is just incredible. So why is it that Blood Surge is so damn good at Infernal Hordes? Why is it, even though it does 20 times less damage than Bone Spirit typically, why is this build able to beat Bone Spirit at Infernal Hordes? It's such an odd thing, but the real reason why is just pure density. The Infernal Hordes pumps out mobs non-stop, continuously, and those mobs generate corpses, and corpses give this build insane DPS. And on top of that, in the final fight, you're fighting 3 bosses at once, so instead of being pure single target, you have 3 targets to hit, which is actually a huge damage increase to each of those targets, which we're going to get into why. But first, let's talk about how much value we get out of corpses. So, the main corpse consumption engine is the Creator's Embrace. Every single time that we Blood Surge, it is going to eat every single corpse on the screen and causing them to explode. Now, the damage from this explosion is fairly significant. You can see I low rolled the damage on mine, but it's still doing like 10 to 20 million, which isn't an astronomical amount of damage. But when you're looking at Infernal Hordes, where it's really important to kill these small white mobs, hitting them for 10 to 20 million damage is not trivial. It will kill them, even in like level 7, sometimes even in level 8, this effect will kill them. On top of that, these gloves give 17% max life, which is huge. They make your Blood Surge drain 4 extra times from elites. This means you're getting 4 times the healing. It means that you're scaling the Blood Nova itself more, because whenever you suck, it scales the Blood Nova, right? And that's going to get scaled harder. You get 7 ranks of Blood Surge, which is absolutely insane. You get 5 ranks of Tides of Blood, which is the biggest damage multiplier this build has. And the corpse consumption is going to give us resource. It's going to proc Corpse Eater, which is going to give us a 40% damage multiplier. These gloves are just incredible. And this is the main thing that makes this build so good. Now, these gloves on their own, with all the things you just described, very powerful. But this next piece, the Embalmer aspect, is where it gets to the next level. So the Embalmer aspect is going to make it so whenever we eat corpses, their corpses are going to spawn Blood Orbs. Now, Blood Orbs have tremendous value in this build. For starters, the Paragon node Blood Begets Blood is a straight 50% damage multiplier now. And we actually generate enough corpses and enough Blood Orbs to keep up that 50% multiplier in every situation, single target and AoE. So straight up, this is already a 50% multiplier, but that is not even half of what it does. The biggest thing that it does is proccing Rathma's Vigor. Now, what is interesting about Rathma's Vigor is that it is going to actually, every 12 seconds, can give you guaranteed overpower, okay? Now, what's interesting is the second line. You reduce the cooldown of this skill by 2 seconds every time Blood Orbs heal or overheal you for 8,000 life. That is the crux of how this build destroys. What is happening is that we spawn, like an elite or a pack of mobs spawn, we Blood Surge them, they die, corpses spawn. Actually, the Creator's Embrace procs on the Blood Surge that you cast that killed enemies. So if your Blood Surge kills enemies, it eats the corpses. So we never have corpses on the ground. But regardless, those corpses spawn Blood Orbs. Then we pick up those Blood Orbs to reset Rathma's Vigor extremely quickly. And because of the way the Infernal Horde works, it's just like this little circle, right? And you're always in the same areas. So as you're moving around the map, you're constantly picking up blood orbs. You're always playing towards the middle, so you're never that far from more blood orbs. And this is giving you crazy resets on Rathm's Vigor. It's giving you blood against blood for 50%, and you're doing huge amounts of damage. So all of that is great, but you might be wondering, why do you have 80,000 life? That seems really excessive. Well, blood orbs actually heal you based on your maximum life, which means that the more life you have, the more they heal you, which means the more you proc this, which means you're going to reset your cooldowns faster. So by stacking all this maximum life, A, we're getting a bigger additive to overpower, B, we're resetting Rathm's Vigor faster, and C, we're getting tankier. So all of this maximum life is doing tremendous work in this build. So as I explained, the Career's Embrace is going to be eating every corpse that gets made. So you might be looking at my skill bar thinking, okay, where's corpse tendrils? Well, no corpses, no corpse tendrils. Technically, there is stuff that you can do to set up for corpse tendrils, but it isn't worth running. The setup required is not worth the 3 skill points required to get the ability active. Particularly in Infernal Hordes, you don't have time to cast corpse tendrils and wait for it to pull enemies, or wait for grasping veins to go off, or anything like that. You need to kill everything as it's spawning. That's what's going to give you the best possible point value. So because of that, we don't run corpse tendrils. Now, the next thing you're probably wondering is, where is Decrepify? Decrepify is standard just as much as corpse tendrils in every single Necromancer build. So why no Decrepify? Well, we're actually getting Decrepify from a new aspect, which is Cursed Aura. This is going to automatically cast Decrepify and Iron Maiden on enemies around us. And we're doing this cute little tech here, where we're running Iron Maiden with Enhanced Iron Maiden, so that the Iron Maiden is actually regenerating essence as it spreads to enemies. So that's giving us a nice little bit of essence generation, and this is also where we are getting our Decrepify from. So no Decrepify, no corpse tendrils. The next thing is basic skill. So technically, if you want to, you can put a point into Hemorrhage and a point into Enhanced Hemorrhage and run Hemorrhage here. This is particularly useful at low end when you aren't very geared and where you will sometimes have essence problems. But as you get into the in-game version of the build, you will never have essence problems. And I prefer to play without something on my left click, because when I do, I sometimes accidentally click on a mob, but without it, I can just walk through them. So no left click. Now, we are running Blood Mist because Blood Mist is pretty nice, even in this build, but we're also running no ultimate. There isn't an ultimate that is worth putting on the bar. It's not worth 3 points. It's not worth ever pressing over Blood Surge. And at the end of the day, we just don't run an ultimate. So there's basically nothing we could run. You could technically run Blight if you wanted to for the 20% damage for bossing. But honestly, I just find this annoying, and I would rather just press Blood Surge. It's not that much of a damage increase, considering the fact that you lose a cast because you're casting Blood Surge. Or because you're casting Blight, and it's only 20%, so... And bosses move and stuff. I just don't feel like dealing with it. I'm just gonna cast Blood Surge and kill everything. So that's why you're seeing so few skills in the bar. There literally is just nothing to run that makes this build better that isn't better than a simple passive. Now, looking at my gear, you're probably thinking, okay, this is another uber unique stack OP build. But I was playing this build before I had uber uniques. This build is plenty strong without them. Now, granted, it gets a lot stronger with them, but the variation I'm going to show you is extremely powerful without even using uber uniques. So, on my helmet, of course, Harlequin, huge maximum life roll, damage reduction, and ranks to all skills. Harlequin actually doesn't do a ton in this build, which sounds kind of weird because you'd think it would do a ton, but really there's just not really much else better to run. But if you don't have Harlequin, you can actually just run a helmet with Hardened Bones on it. And yeah, it's going to be a little bit less damage, but it's totally fine. You can get essence generation on it, and it's actually going to go pretty far for you. Of course, in our chest piece, we need the Embalmer. If you do have a Tyrell's Might, you could also opt for Tyrell's Might over Harlequin, just as a little side note. But Curious Embrace, you just want good rolls on this thing. Every single stat besides maximum life is exceedingly important. Maximum life is still important, but Blood Surge draining multiple times, ranks of Blood Surge, and Tides of Blood are all fantastic stats, and you want them all rolled as high as possible. Pants, Blood Moon Breacher, straight 150% damage multiplier. Incredibly good. The stats on this item are not very important. Ranks to curse skills and maximum life are decent. Overpower damage is okay. Curse duration is useless, but 150% multiplier, so we gotta run them. On our boots, we want essence per second, int, and max life. I think I'm kind of torn between maximum life and movement speed. It's kind of hard to say which one is better. I just like stacking a ton of life. I liked being really tanky, so that's what I did. But you're going to notice something interesting, which is that I'm running chance to stun for 2 seconds on hit. This is a tempering, and because Blood Surge is hitting 3, like, we have the gloves, right? This is adding extra drains to the Blood Surge, 4 extra drains. So Blood Surge already is hitting 5 times. Then we're running the Blood Surge Echo aspect, so the Nova's hitting twice. So we're hitting each mob 5 times per Blood Mist cast. And when you're, or Blood Surge cast. And then you combine that with the chance to stun on a hit. And actually we get quite a bit of CC out, and the CC is cheap. And you also want this on your chest piece, ideally. I have corpse control size because I was testing some stuff earlier. But on your chest piece and your helmet if you're running a non-Harlequin. And it doesn't matter if there's a chance to stun, chance to freeze, doesn't matter. It's just decent. And, of course, we're running the Cursed Aura. Weapon, I'm playing Doombringer, but this is mostly for, like, Pit 8+. Doombringer is very good in this build, don't get me wrong. But I played a two-handed weapon. I was farming Horde 7 with just a two-handed weapon. And on that two-handed weapon, I was actually playing Great Feast. Now, you can go Great Feast or... I think if you're running a two-handed weapon, you have to run Great Feast. It's way better than Bloodbathe. But with the main hand, offhand, I do like Bloodbathe. But if you don't have Doombringer and you're playing a two-handed, definitely run Great Feast. It's going to make your resource cost a lot more punishing, but because you're not going to have Starless Sky, there's actually an anecdote to that. Instead of Starless Sky, you play the Starlight Circle aspect. And so what's interesting about this is that Great Feast is going to give you a 90% damage multiplier on a two-handed weapon. Very, very powerful. But the downside is it's going to drain Essence, so Essence becomes a big issue. But the Starlight Circle is going to heal you, give you resource back based on the amount of healing you receive. And if you recall, Blood Surge is draining many, many, many times, meaning you're getting a ginormous amount of healing. Also, keep in mind you're generating tons of blood orbs, and finally, remember you can pop your potion. So you have all of these tools to generate resource, and this combo is actually very competitive with this double uber unique setup that you're seeing here. Extremely competitive. In fact, I actually cleared a tier 7 with that setup. It is very, very powerful. You're going to obliterate tier 4 and 5 with that setup. No problem at all. On our necklace, we're running the Sacrificial Choker. And for our stats on the necklace, we're looking for Tides of Blood, because this is by far our best multiplier, and then we're looking for Coalesced Blood. Ideally, you can get both, and then finally you want Crit Chance. Good luck getting that. I haven't gotten it. Nobody's posted one yet, but that's the ideal stats. But regardless, just look for damage multiplier stats, attack speed, crit, that kind of thing, right? Just big damage stuff. And for all of our offensive tempers, we want this stat. So whether it's your rings, your necklace, your weapon, anything, you want blood attack speed. That is by far the best stat. And on our jewelry, we're also going to be running either resource generation tempering or resource cost reduction tempering. Both are very good. And on the ring, we're running Rathmas Chosen for the 50% attack speed buff after we overpower, extremely strong. And there's an extremely important stat on your ring, okay? That is a lucky hit chance to apply. Vulnerable. Remember, hitting 6 or 8 times per blood surge, depending on your rolls. You absolutely want this lucky hit chance to apply vulnerable. It is your only source of vulnerable, and it is a straight 20% damage multiplier, okay? By far the best stat. And then after that, you want crit and intelligence, but make sure you get lucky hit to apply vulnerable on your ring. For Book of the Dead, we get a ton of value. We get 18% crit chance from the skirmishers. We get a 53% multiplier from the mages, and then for the golem, we get another 61%. This is a massive amount of damage. Now for the skill tree, as I mentioned, you can run this hemorrhage setup here, where after you pick up a blood orb, your hemorrhage is going to generate more resource. Okay setup, it's not bad at all. Max out blood surge, obviously, enhanced blood surge, and then paranormal blood surge for those guaranteed overpowers. Very, very good. Moving on, we're playing Blood Mist, and I'm playing Enhanced Blood Mist, but currently I'm not playing Ghastly or Dreadful. You can play one of these if you want to, specifically Dreadful. You could also run Ghastly if you're having trouble in single target, getting corpses out and keeping up your blood begets blood and that kind of thing. But in general, I just prefer Enhanced Blood Mist for the cooldown reduction, and that's all I care about. And I forgot to mention, by the way, we are running 3 points in Heat Flesh purely for single target, because the corpse generation is going to fuel the whole Embalmer combo, right? So we need Heat Flesh. It's very important for single target. I have 1 point into Spiked Armor because that's how much I need to get to armor cap, but depending on your build, you may need it, you may not. I'm playing 3 points in Grim Harvest currently, but this is another flex one. You can have 1 or 3 depending on your resource generation, and then 3 points into Fueled by Death for the damage multiplier. I already mentioned the Iron Maiden combo, and then we have Death's Embrace, damage reduction, and damage output, Death's Approach for the movement speed, Amplify Damage for the damage multiplier, and then Decrepify with Abhorrent Decrepify. This is going to reduce the cooldown on Blood Mist, which is kind of nice. It's kind of worth it for the 1 skill point. I just want Blood Mist up as much as I can. Here I'm running Gruesome Mending, 3 points, because more healing means more Blood Orb resets, and the healing is very good. You're going to see my health just flying up constantly in fights. 3 points into Clef's Blood for the damage multiplier, 3 points into Tides of Blood, damage multiplier, and then 3 points into Drained Vitality. This is where a lot of my Fortify is coming from, and you can see me absolutely pumping that Fortify. I like having a point into Transfusion as well. This is one of your flex slots. If you need points in like Spiked Armor or don't need points in Spiked Armor and that kind of thing, Transfusion is the spot where you can move points out of very freely. This is not a very important thing. I enjoy it. I think the little bit of extra Blood Orbs helps, specifically against bosses, but that's just me. Inspiring Leader, 12% crit chance, and then Standalone and Momentum Morning for big damage, and then finally, of course, So, lastly, we need to talk a little bit about the Paragon board, because the Paragon board is very, very powerful for this build. So for starters, you have Scent of Death, and remember, you're consuming every corpse, so straight 15% damage multiplier, which is awesome. Then we have Blood Begets Blood, which is a straight 50% multiplier, and then we have Flesh Eater, and remember, we are eating every corpse that spawns. So we are getting ginormous amounts of Flesh Eater uptime. Basically, 100% uptime on this 40% multiplier. So you can see Paragon board is very strong. The stats on gear are very strong, and everything just works to create an incredible build. Now, I always like to do a gameplay section to teach you how to play the build optimally. And with this build, it is particularly tricky, so make sure that you stay focused during this section, okay? Don't click away yet, you need to watch this section. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna walk up to enemies, then you're gonna hold Blood Surge, okay? Once the enemy is dead, make sure you stop casting Blood Surge, and then move to the next enemy, and then cast Blood Surge again. And that's the entire gameplay loop. That's the beauty of it. And with that simple gameplay loop, these are the results you're gonna get. Everything you've seen on screen, and this build is incredible. I hope you guys like it. This is by far my favorite build I've ever played. Like, I think that's actually true. I think this is genuinely my favorite build I've ever played in D4. So I hope you guys like it as much as I do. If you have questions, join our Discord, check out my Twitch stream. I stream this build every day. I'll be testing more stuff. I think we're gonna do minions pretty soon, so definitely check that out. But thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.